Picture this, the wires that move your paycheck, your rent, and that awkward $20 refund from your friend, gone. Swapped for one clean click that settles in seconds. That sounds like the kind of next century sci-fi, but hang tight because what Ripple is cooking up could actually turn that into your Monday morning kind of coffee ritual. Now, here's a quick disclaimer, right? I'm not a financial advisor and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile and you could lose all of your money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. Your investments are entirely your responsibility and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses. This video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Alright, so now that the lawyers are smiling, let me kind of paint you a picture. Last month, I thought I'd be the kind of cool cousin who wires a little help to family back in Malia. Now, $300. Now, you should be thinking that's simple, right? But here's a spoiler. It was kind of like wrestling a fax machine from the 90s, right? The bank wanted $45 in fees, a fresh KYC form, and then had the nerve to tell me that it would take 3 to 5 business days. Now, by the end, or by the time the money actually landed, my cousin's phone bill had already been gone to, well, the collections. It's not exactly the kind of superhero moment that I had hoped for. And that frustration is exactly the itch that Ripple is trying to scratch. While most of crypto kind of loves to kind of chant down with the banks, Ripple kind of is taking a totally different tact. They invite the banks to the blockchain party, hand them a drink and show them that how they can kind of take that 2 steps without actually stepping on anyone else's toes. Now, at the XRP Las Vegas conference, yes, Vegas, because apparently even blockchain, revolves, or at least revolutions, I should say, kind of revolve around those neon lights. Now, CEO Brad Garlinghouse dropped the mic with a pretty bold claim. Ripple is about to, and quote, rewire the entire banking system. Now, if you've kind of ever untangled a 20-foot roll of speaker cable, you know rewiring anything is pretty messy. But Garlinghouse's bigger point was, we're massively underestimating how life-changing a proper cross-border payments overhaul could actually be. He's talking no intermediaries, no pre-funded Nostro accounts, no 5-day holding pattern while your money enjoys a layover in Zurich. Just zip, value, and moves like an email. And the best part here is that it's not just hype. Ripple's chief tech wizard, David Schwartz, the guy who looks like he could actually hack NASA with a T1i83, has been kind of preaching this on every stage that will actually have him. Now, if Ripple's on-demand liquidity kind of keeps gaining traction, the $22 trillion that kind of swishes around the world annually in remittances might finally actually catch up to the kind of Netflix-level streaming speeds. That's weddings paid for instantly, tuition settled in a blink, and maybe no more, sorry mum, the wires still pending text messages. But hold on, it is every kind of good, I guess, adventure story needs a bit of a dragon. And in this particular tale, the dragon is the entrenched banking infrastructure that kind of dates back to, and I kid you not, the age of telegrams. And that's not even telegram, but telegrams. Now, Swift, of course, the network that currently shuffles messages, telling banks how to move the money, moves over $5 trillion a day. Now, that's kind of like trying to pull a high-speed fiber line through a medieval castle. Everything's kind of built for kind of carrier pigeons, not for light speed. And Garlinghouse knows this, and instead of kind of shouting, burn the castle, he's offering the blueprints for indoor plumbing. Now, according to the US Faster Payments Council, yes, that actually exists, and yes, their name promises more speed than most of us have ever felt while waiting for a paycheck. Now, Ripple is the one of the kind of handful of firms, primed to make cross-border transfers and pun intended here, swift. Now, they make them cheap and, of course, transparent. Now, Morgan Stanley even wrote a whole section in a recent memo calling Ripple a genuine contender against Swift's $5 trillion kingdom. But let me kind of bring this down from the kind of 40,000-foot view to some kind of real kitchen table math, right? Just imagine your salary hits your bank Friday afternoon. Now, instead of the usual funds available Monday morning notice, the money pops up in your account in under 10 seconds. You instantly forward a slice to your mum overseas who gets it with 0 fees before she finishes brewing her tea. At scale, that's not just convenience. It's billions in freed up cash that today sits idle in pre-funded accounts, basically gathering dust. And yet, despite all of this promise, the crypto space loves turning everything into a cage match. Bitcoin versus XRP, Cardano versus Ethereum, Dogecoin versus your sanity. You know, the kind of drill. So during kind of that Vegas keynote, Garlinghouse made a bit of a plea here. Collaboration over competition, right? He even teased a partnership with Cardano. And let's be honest, seeing Ripple talking nice to Cardano was like watching Marvel and DC share a milkshake. Now, his message was rather clear. We grow the whole pie, not just a slice, or the pie itself gets toasted by the regulators. And speaking of building ramps, right? If you're tired of shouting your hot takes into the void, jump into our free educational Discord server. There's a link lounging in the description below. It's where we kind of break down stuff like this in plain English, memes included. Seriously, come in and say hi. Okay, so back to Vegas then, right? The lights dim, the stage kind of flashes graphics of the globe hopping money trails, and Garlinghouse drops another nugget. In 10 to 20 years, we'll look back and wonder how we ever tolerated the old system. Now, community legend Vale kind of pictured the neighborhood wizard who kind of always knows the gossip, if you will. He says that it won't even take that long. Now, Vale's tweet basically hints that Ripple's already kind of flipping switches behind the scene right now. And you're going to be asking for receipts, right? And it's a steady growing list of banks and payment corridors trailing or even outright adopting, Ripple's on-demand liquidity. You've got Mexico, the Philippines, Thailand corridors, where remittances are a lifeline, are kind of seeing pilot programs that slashes fees from 7% to less than 1%. And I mean 7% on a $500 paycheck is $35. That could otherwise buy diapers or, at Las Vegas prices, maybe just half a cocktail or a bottle of water. Okay, so let me sprinkle in a stat that slapped me awake. Right, the World Bank says migrants sent a record $860 billion home last year, and over $48 billion of that went straight into fees. Now that's billions evaporating so middlemen can shuffle spreadsheets. Now Ripple's kind of plan would shove those middlemen out of the line like kind of an impatient New Yorker. Boom, more money lands where it's actually needed. So here's a personal confession, right? I used to hoard airline miles like a dragon hoarded gold. But if sending money abroad actually becomes as easy as kind of pinging a friend on WhatsApp, well, I'd happily trade those miles for a sheer satisfaction of my cash not vanishing en route. So just imagine a world where grandma, in Peru FaceTimes you, and the background is a new fridge that your last minute birthday transfer actually paid for, and it was instant. Now that's the emotional kind of punch underpinning Garlinghouse's otherwise kind of nerdy slide deck. Now we know the skeptics will throw shade and say Brad's just selling snake oil. Banks don't want crypto. Fair point, but institutions, they move slower than a sloth on vacation. But let's not ignore the breadcrumbs here. Santander, SBI Holdings, Bank of America, each has hinted or even outright stated that they're testing Ripple's rails. So when I see a bank boardroom full of people who still kind of print emails nodding at blockchain demos, that is not hype. So that's kind of the cold sweat from the incumbents realizing that Web3 won't kindly wait for them to finish their coffee. Now, of course, there's the regulatory gorilla, right? The SEC has had Ripple in its crosshairs over XRP's status, and every time a new motion gets filed, my Twitter feed kind of turns into a fireworks show. Yet, Ripple keeps shipping product, right? Imagining or expanding, I should say, in, Asia Pacific and topping the most sought after employees list. It's kind of like watching someone run a marathon while kind of swatting mosquitoes. Annoying, but it's not a deal breaker. And if you're wondering how to kind of get skin in the game, well, step one would be education, not FOMO. Read, question, argue politely, then choose. So when you're ready to experiment, consider filing up for, at least kind of firing up an account on the Blowfin crypto exchange. It's a friendly reminder that the Blowfin link in the description is an affiliate link, which means that if you sign up and trade, a tiny piece of that trade actually supports the channel's caffeine addiction. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but it does keep the deep dives coming. So let's zoom in on the human element then, right? There's a taxi driver in Lagos who, spends 15% of his weekly pay just to wire money to his family in Cotonou. Now that's like a tip jar, that never actually reaches the waiter. Now if Ripple can drop the cost below 1%, suddenly that driver's daughter gets new school shoes and the driver keeps more for savings. Multiply that by millions and you've got a grassroots stimulus plan powered by cryptography. Now Garlinghouse's mantra, grow the pie. It also kind of means interoperating with Bitcoin, right? Some people kind of treat Bitcoin like the kind of OG that refuses to collaborate, but Brad, literally kind of gifted the skull of Satoshi art piece to the Bitcoiners as a peace offering. Now that's the kind of blockchain version of sending cupcakes to neighbors that you've argued with about lawn boundaries. It says, let's hash this out over coffee instead of flame wars. And remember, right? The teased Ripple-Cardano partnership? Well, if that blossoms, we might actually see cross-chain liquidity pools where value hops from ADA to XRP to USD in milliseconds. So just picture a global vending machine where you drop in one coin and any kind of drink that you want pops out. There's no currency swap kiosk in sight, and that is insanely powerful. But let's get real, right? Grand visions, they live or die on user experience. Nobody cares about triple-digit kind of entry counting if it still feels like filing out a passport renewal. So Ripple's kind of ace card here is hiding the blockchain plumbing so that normal people just see cent ticks. Now, think about Uber, right? We don't praise its algorithm. We praise the fact that a car shows up in 3 minutes and the driver doesn't ask if you've got cash. Ripple wants banks to look that effortless. Now, of course, none of this is certain. Maybe regulators slam on the brakes, or maybe a newer, shinier protocol steals Ripple's thunder. Tech is brutal, right? Ever kind of own a BlackBerry? Exactly, right? But the kind of odds of cross-border payments staying kind of prehistoric while everything else from TikTok memes to AI chatbots goes warp speed kind of feels slim to none. So here's a personal anecdote break then, right? I remember that my dad telling me how Western Union telegrams were once the cutting edge. Fast forward to last Christmas and he Venmo'd me gift money in 8 seconds. So if you kind of plot that curve, the next step looks like instant global settlement, a world where borders matter for culture, not for currency. Now let's talk dollars and cents then, or XRP and cents. Right? Earlier this year, Ripple's on-demand liquidity volume reportedly crossed the $30 billion mark. That's still peanuts compared to Swift's daily traffic, but remember when Netflix mail-ordered DVDs? Dominance can sneak up on you like a cat at dinner time. And another stat that kind of freaked me out was Deloitte estimates businesses sink over $1.7 trillion into working capital tied up in cross-border friction. So free that up and you have cash pumping into innovation instead of sitting in limbo. Ripple's pitch to banks is basically, want higher returns without raising fees? use our rails. It's financially kind of, judo, and use the big guys' weight against them. Now, you might ask, if this is so game-changing, why hasn't the market sent XRP to the moon? Well, markets, they run on emotion and headlines. Lawsuits spook investors, meme culture drives spikes, and half the time it feels like cats trading. But fundamentals, they have a knack for winning the long games. So Amazon's stock was a roller coaster in the dot-com era or dot-com burst bubble, yet here we are, right? Ripple kind of playing the marathon, not the TikTok challenge. Now, before we wrap up, let me toss you a challenge here. Next time that you kind of pay an international invoice or send money abroad, count the clicks, the fees, and the wait time. Then imagine it happening while you read the tweet. That's the kind of delta that Ripple is chasing here. Maybe it succeeds. Maybe someone else grabs the trophy, but the direction of travel is quite clear. Faster, cheaper, borderless. And if you want to keep tabs on how this saga unfolds in real time, join our free educational Discord, and it is your kind of backstage pass. Come debate, share charts, or just drop your favorite gif of Garlinghouse doing whatever eyebrow raise. Now, the link is in the description, and did I mention it's completely free? So what's the takeaway buzzing in my head? Well, Ripple isn't trying to kill the banks, it's trying to plug them into the 21st century before they trip over their own cables. Collaboration beats tribalism, and if Garlinghouse's crew really does rewire the banking system, well, the history books might just tag this era as the moment that wires went wireless for money.